Hey guys, it's Thermal Grease Monkey here, and I'm back once again with another video. This last week, on October 14th, Windows 10 got its last and final official update to the public. Now, for the next year, if you pay them a certain amount of money, you can have extended updates for the next year. But officially, Windows 10 is now laid to rest. And with Windows 11 coming out and having so many hardware restrictions, I want to honor Windows 10 a little bit by testing a CPU that is no longer going to be officially supported by Microsoft with Windows 11. I'm going to be testing a Zen 1 processor from AMD, more specifically a Ryzen 5 1500X. I want to do the 1500X because I felt it's a good budget CPU. If people are looking at about the $20 to $25 price point for a cheap CPU, you can find a lot of these Zen 1 Ryzen 3s or Ryzen 5 1400 or 1500X CPUs for about $20 to $25. So I picked myself up a Ryzen 5 1500X, paired it with a 16 gig kit of RAM, and grabbed my trusty GTX 1660. Put them all together, and I decided to test 4 different games: Marvel Rivals, Helldivers 2, CS2, and Dead by Daylight. 4 different games to see how it still performs in 2025. So let's get things started here. Kicking off, we have Marvel Rivals, and I'll throw up a little bit of footage here. At 1080p is what we tested all of our settings at. 1080p ultra settings with Marvel Rivals, we're averaging about 24 FPS with 18 FPS 1% lows, with the occasional jump into the low 30s, but it is a brutal experience, and the 1660 has a really tough time keeping up. Moving things down to high, we start averaging about 35 FPS, same 1% lows, but we do have things swing up into the 40s, but with those 18 FPS, 1% lows, it does make things really difficult and still a terrible gaming experience. At medium, we run into the same problems again: 41 FPS with 12 FPS, 1% lows, and an average of 60 FPS for the highs. With us averaging about 41 FPS at medium, it still was not a good experience. Moving it down to low gave us a 49 FPS average, 35 FPS for our 1% lows, and 64 for our high. No matter what graphic settings I was at for Marvel Rivals, I was pegged at 100% with the 1500X nearly the whole time. I know that the 1660, although might struggle in this game a little bit, should be able to be doing a little bit better, and the 16 gigs of RAM shouldn't be an issue, which leaves our 1500X. And it being pegged at 100% most of the time made a lot of sense, especially on those 1% lows. So it does make it hard to recommend if you're going to play Marvel Rivals, especially because the minimum specs say either an i5 6600 or a Ryzen 5 1600X. So it does make it hard to recommend if you're going to be playing something a little bit newer, say like Marvel Rivals. The second game we're going to get into is Helldivers 2. Now, Helldivers 2, when I tested it, I did no upscaling, so I ran everything at native, and it definitely was a difficult experience. Across the board, whether we were at ultra, high, medium, or low, it didn't really matter. It was a difficult experience, whether we were at high or ultra, averaging in the high 20 to low 30 FPS range, or when we were at medium to low, in the high 30 to low 40 FPS range. It wasn't a great experience overall. Now, if you do turn on some upscaling and whatnot, it definitely smooths out the game a little bit. It does look a little bit worse, but it smooths it out a lot more and it makes it much more playable and a enjoyable experience. So having the upscalers turned on a little bit wouldn't be a terrible idea and would smooth the game out quite a bit. The 1500X definitely didn't have its strongest showing here, but was capable of playing the game, and I know it can because I have people playing it on an i3 8100 and a Ryzen 3 1300X respectively. So the 1500X, I know when it's given a little bit of help, is able to play this game just fine, and when I put on some of the upscalers myself, it smoothed out the game quite a bit. The third game we're going to test here is CS2. CS2 is a fairly easy to run game, but CS2 compared to the original CSGO is more demanding. When we ran things at very high, we averaged about 98 FPS, with our 1% being at 58 FPS. Our highs were at 112, with our 1% being 63, At medium, we get 126 average with a 73 FPS low, and at low, we're at 152 with 85 FPS low. So you are going to definitely have some swings. The older microarchitecture, it definitely makes things difficult. But overall, I would say it's a good experience, and if you do a little bit of overclocking, those 1% lows will come up, and it will smooth things out quite a bit. The last game I tested was Dead by Daylight. That, as much as it pains me to say it, is nearly a decade old. It's about 9 years old and counting. It came out in 2016, and when it came out, the minimum specs for it were a GTX 660 with 1 gigabyte of VRAM on it. So the 1660 should be able to handle it, and the CPU minimum spec was, I believe it was a 2nd or 3rd gen i3. So our 1500X should be able to handle it just fine. And at Ultra, it does. Averaging about 79 FPS with 42 FPS for the 1% lows. Probably wouldn't be where I'd be running it at. Higher medium settings, we find ourselves in the high 80s to low 100 FPS range, and we find ourselves with our 1% lows being in the high 70 to high 80 FPS range on our 1% lows. And at low, we're capped at the engine cap pretty much the whole time. Aside from its slight normal deviation, we're pretty much capped there. So if you're wanting a nice mix of a little bit of graphics, I would go medium to high settings. If you want all of the frames, go at low. Ultra, you can do it. You just probably will have an occasional dip or drop below 60, but it's still overall a really smooth experience. And I just wanted to show that if you're playing an older title or something that's a lot better optimized, say like Fortnite or Valorant, you're going to be able to play this game. And that kind of rolls me into my conclusion. If you're going to be playing a lot of these games, CS2, you're going to be playing Valorant, Fortnite, Dead by Daylight, a lot of these easier to run games, Minecraft, this is a great option, a great beginner CPU. You can get on the AM4 platform for really cheap, find a good B450 board for cheap, get a 1500X, pair the two together, and off to the races. And once you're ready to take the next step, you have the money for it, whatever it is that propels you to buy a new CPU, then get yourself a new CPU, and you have so much room to grow with. I think it's a good CPU if you're on a tight budget, you're kind of wanting to test the waters on PC gaming and plan on playing mostly budget and easier to run titles. If you're trying to play new stuff, you're trying to play Marvel Rivals, you're trying to play the new so if you're planning on playing some new games, Marvel Rivals obviously should be a pretty easy one to run, but it struggles with. But other games that are coming out, stuff like Battlefield 6, that's going to have a really tough time running. The new Dying Light game that came out, also going to have a tough time running that as well. If you look at the new Indiana Jones game that came out, whatever it was last year or the year before, that one also, it's not going to even be able to launch the game because you need at least 6 cores to launch it on a newer architecture. So a lot of these new games that are coming out, it's going to have a tough time. So if you're on a tight budget and you're just trying to play simple, easy to run, esports, indie title type of games, I think it's a good entry-level option. But not if you're really trying to play some newer and more established games. So I hope you guys enjoyed my video though. If you guys enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. If you didn't, feel free to hit dislike. If you guys are enjoying my content, if you guys could hit the subscribe button, it'd be really appreciated. And hit that bell icon so you guys are getting notifications from my videos are going up. And if you guys can give suggestions for what other hardware you want me to test or games to test as well. And I'll see if I can put that together and try out some of your suggestions. I do next week have a special Halloween themed episode planned, so stay tuned in for that, and I will see you guys all next week. Later, guys.